In this podcast episode, David Pinsof explores the complex nature of human psychology, especially focusing on misconceptions about happiness, motivation, opinions, and social behavior. Throughout the discussion, Pinsof dismantles naive assumptions about internal states driving human behavior and instead paints a picture of humans as incentive-driven animals whose social interactions and cognitive functions are deeply intertwined with evolutionary imperatives. Pinsof starts by challenging the common belief that human behavior is primarily driven by a desire for happiness. He argues that this assumption is not only naive, but leads to confusion and logical paradoxes. From an evolutionary standpoint, it does not make sense for animals to be motivated by an abstract internal state like happiness. Instead, humans, like other animals, are driven to seek concrete things in the external world: food, sex, status, praise, and group inclusion that historically correlated with biological fitness. He critiques the idea of happiness as a motivating carrot, pointing out the infinite regress dilemma. If happiness is needed to motivate desire, then evolution would have to instill a desire for happiness itself repeatedly, which is implausible. Rather, our nervous system is directly wired to physiological needs and environmental incentives and can motivate behavior without the intermediary of feeling happy, comparable to how thermostats regulate temperature without feelings. Pinsof suggests that happiness is better understood not as a motivator, but as a mechanism for recalibrating our brain's expectations when events turn out better than anticipated. When positive surprises occur, like unexpectedly tasty food or successful cooking, the brain updates its model of reality and motivation accordingly, and this recalibration is what subjective happiness represents. Interestingly, this explains habituation. As we repeatedly encounter the same pleasures, they become expected, reducing their capacity to generate happiness, even though our desire for them may persist. This decouples motivation from happiness, showing that people often pursue things that make them less happy over time. Moving beyond happiness, Pinsof emphasizes incentives as a much more accurate framework for understanding human behavior. Incentives are anything humans are evolutionarily wired to want in the world, encompassing broad categories such as status, belonging, sex, and survival needs. Incentive structures, the availability and distribution of these incentives over time and space, shape behavior and culture. Unlike happiness, incentives are concrete and directly connected to evolutionary fitness. He differentiates between ends and means in human desires. For instance, money is valued not internally, but as a means to obtain incentives like food or comfort. While the specific ways incentives manifest can be shaped by cultural and environmental factors, the fundamental evolutionary goals remain largely inflexible. This allows a distinction between proximate and ultimate explanations. Proximate questions investigate how motivational systems work in immediate terms, while ultimate questions address why those systems evolved and what fitness benefits they conferred. One of the most profound segments of the conversation revolves around the nature of opinions. Contrary to popular understandings, Pinsof contends that opinions are not merely preferences, beliefs, or perspectives. Instead, they are better thought of as preferences plus social judgments about others who share or oppose those preferences. Opinions serve as vehicles in battles over social norms. Sharing an opinion is akin to campaigning for the elevation of those who hold similar preferences while denigrating others. This framing means that most opinions are status-seeking tools cloaked in the language of rational discourse or moral concern. Because openly revealing this self-interested motivation lowers one's status, individuals engage in subtle social signaling, making it appear as if their opinions are based on higher values such as truth, happiness, or authenticity. Through examples like the cultural reverence for Shakespeare, Pinsof illustrates how opinions can enforce or challenge social norms, shaping group membership and hierarchies. This dynamic explains why opinions often seem transparently self-serving, yet remain fiercely defended. Attempts to expose the self-interested nature of opinions typically backfire because such accusations themselves become status battles. The complex web of concealment and status competition imbues opinions with a paradox. Everyone senses the underlying game, but openly calling it out is socially costly. Pinsof also delves into the functions of arguing, highlighting how it is not typically about finding truth, but about gaining social advantage. Arguments often serve to make others look inferior or to intimidate and silence opposition. For example, extreme and insulting tactics like comparing opponents to notorious figures are poor persuasion tools, but serve well in silencing dissent by imposing social fear. He distinguishes between genuine arguments aimed at collaboration and pseudo-arguments, which masquerade as rational debate but secretly target status and social dominance. Warning signs of pseudo-arguments include failure to listen, caricaturing positions, deflecting questions, and ignoring common ground. Although good faith debate is possible, especially for mundane, practical issues, the presence of status and tribalism often sabotages rational discourse in politics and culture. The conversation moves toward the social origins of consciousness and self-awareness. Pinsof endorses the social brain theory, which posits that our large brains evolved primarily for managing complex social interactions rather than just tool use or problem solving. Our sense of self, self-consciousness, and identity largely serve the function of navigating social environments, effectively acting like an internal selfie cam that monitors how we appear to others and adjusts behavior accordingly. Reasoning, too, is reframed as a tool for persuasion and reputation management, rather than pure truth-seeking. Cognitive biases such as confirmation bias and motivated reasoning make sense under this social view, where winning debates and maintaining favorable impressions matter more than unbiased accuracy. In a lighter yet incisive turn, Pinsof discusses the idea of Deepities, statements that sound profound but toggle between an earth-shattering, implausible interpretation and a mundane, trivial one. These statements produce a pleasurable aha experience without genuine insight. Classic examples include phrases like "you only live once" or "everything happens for a reason," which, when explored, have multiple conflicting meanings. Deepities function as low-risk ways to gain status by sounding profound without the vulnerability of being deeply scrutinized. They are related to vague Bullsht, a broader category of impenetrable, jargon-laden talk that signals group membership and loyalty, sometimes even when content is literally meaningless. This type of language fosters social bonding among insiders while creating barriers for outsiders, serving as covert tests of allegiance and interpretations. Throughout the conversation, a recurring theme is the cyclical nature of status games and social norms. These games often collapse and invert, leading to new hierarchies and shifting cultural values. Educational credentials, political wokeness, and intellectual trends all rise and fall as different status games dominate over time. This dynamic explains cultural variability and the persistent conflicts over beliefs, opinions, and social norms. The discussion also touches upon institutional incentives in science, using the replication crisis as an example of how perverse incentives can promote low-quality research, and how changing those incentives can invert status games to reward reproducibility and rigor instead.